How's everybody doing today? You're watching Slot Car Mayhem. I'm John, and this will be episode 14 of the Glendale 65. And today is a completely unrehearsed. We're going to tear down and break into the control unit and see what we need to do to go ahead and get this portion of the control unit removed and relocated and get it wired to the track. So let's go ahead and let's turn the unit over and see what we have. Before I've done so, I've just wiped the unit down since I had it off. So we're going to turn it over and taking a look at what we have here. Once we turn it over, you see we got a handful of screws for the cover. Looks like we've got a couple of screws that hold the control unit itself to the device, and undoubtedly we'll have to remove and reconnect some wiring in there. So let's go ahead and get this thing torn down and see what we have. Okay, let me grab my trusty screwdriver and my trusty tray so I can keep the parts. Little stickers we got to get into. Maybe there is one right there. Yeah, there's probably one we got to get into that will void the warranty if it's removed. And that in itself is fine. I'm not worried about that. I've had the control unit for well over a year. It's worked great. And if I need to get another control unit, I'll just buy another control unit. I'm not worried about warranty work well after a year. So, but if you are concerned with warranty, this is something you probably don't want to do, because it does appear that right there's a screw that we have to remove to access what we need to access. Now, as we can tell, yes. So, looks like we're going to have to go in here. Okay, I was able to get in there with my 2mm hex and actually undo the screw. And then we can go ahead and remove that right here. And I'm going to go ahead and just completely remove this screw, because I don't want to have to deal with that particular screw again. But we've got our cover off, so we'll move that off to the side. And let's take a look and see what we have. Okay, this here apparently that's our beeper and our speaker. And we have connections here for the blue and we have some blue and yellow. And these are obviously the connections for the sensors themselves. And if we look there, we can see they're right there at the sensors. And we also have our black and red that go and they jump straight across. They also jump over here to provide additional power. So we've got quite a few options we can remove. And in this case, we just have the standard black and red, and we have blue and yellow. Now, the thing is with the blue and yellow, if we look here, it's not one set of terminals, it's actually four. We have blue and yellow and blue and yellow. So these are obviously for the left and the right. And in this case, assuming that the direction of travel is this way, this would be the lane 1 and that terminal set here, so that would be lane 1, lane 2. So closest to the control unit and furthest from the control unit. So these wires are going to have to be cut and tapped to go from here back to where the control unit is going to be remotely mounted. And same thing with the power wires here. But the way it appears here, it's just one single tap. So I'll be taking 6 wires back to the control unit from the connection that we have. And how it's going to look is we're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 wires coming from the track unit going to the terminal block, and then another 6 wires, 2, 4, and 6, going back to the control unit. Okay, removal of the control unit itself is very simple. Once you get it to this stage, you've got a screw here and a screw here. You simply take those screws out and they're regular Phillips, and then the whole unit will just disconnect. So all we really need to pay attention to is the wiring. So I'm probably going to go ahead and I'll do an actual cut on the wiring, and I'll set it up that way instead of unsoldering and desoldering here. I really don't want to be soldering on the control unit any more than I need to. So I'll probably be doing my wire cuts at that location, and we'll take it from there and see what we have. Okay, we're back, and one of the first things that I'm getting ready to do here is I've already cut a blue and yellow wire to go ahead and extend from the control unit itself. And what I'm going to want to do is I'm going to want to extend wires both from the control unit portion here and from the track. And on my joist, my center joist, I already have a terminal block set up where I can connect the sensors from the track, the blue and yellow wires, and I've got another where I can connect the power to and from. So what we're going to do is I'm going to be cutting these wires. I'm going to remove the control unit directly off the track. Then I'm going to start soldering the wires to the track portion. Then I'll go ahead and put it on the control unit portion. So what we do want to make sure of is we want to make sure as we go that we, be mindful of your tape that we have on here. We want to make sure, especially with the sensors, that we know which wire is which on the sensor. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to cut this lane is going to be cut short here, and then this lane will be cut over here. That way we've got a shorter set and a longer set. And then after I solder my wires on here, I will designate this as lane 1, lane 2. Or if that case, if we want to look at it this way, you could say the left lane and the right lane, given that that's the direction of travel going this way. That would be the left lane and the right lane. So one will be the left lane. So it's pretty easy to do. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start by cutting my wires. And you want to leave yourself plenty of room to work. So I'm probably going to cut about right here on this one. That way I got plenty of room to work. And I'll cut up over here on this one, and I really don't want to cut right over the track section because we're going to need to insulate these joints once we solder wires to them. So I'm going to keep it up near closer to the end. Okay, those are cut. That's track 2. And then the same thing I want to do, very similar. Make sure you got plenty of room to work with on both sides, and I'll do it about right there. Okay, that takes care of that, and you can see the control unit portion is now completely removed from the start finish track section itself. Okay, we're back. So what I'm going to do here first is I'm going to go ahead and carefully strip these wires, and these are some pretty thin gauge wires, so we do need to be careful, and we don't need a whole lot. Just about 1/4 of an inch should be good. And once again, we do want to be careful stripping these wires. There we go. And I'm going to do the same thing with my 16 gauge. Now, we can see here what I'm doing, but what I like to do is I like to cross them. And I'll take the wires and cross them up, just like so. And then I'll just do a quick wrap through and wrap each wire around the other. And this seems to give a good solid mechanical connection. And then at that point I'll go ahead and I'll just apply a little bit of solder. Soldering seems to work really well for this, and I really do need to clean my tip. Okay, and this is the type of connection you're going to want to solder. So now that that's done, I know this connection's good. And I'll do the exact same thing with the blue wire. And if you're going to use heat shrink, you need to put the heat shrink on the unit before we twist it down. But in this case, I really don't have to. So just twist them in amongst themselves, around each other, just like so. And that gives a good mechanical connection. And then we just do our solder. And our solder does a good job of finalizing the connection. Okay, now you can see I've got all my connections made. I've got the 2 different connections for the sensors in the track, and I do have them labeled left and right. You can see that. I doubt you can see that, left and right. So I know which one's which when I'm making my connections going back to the control unit. It's easy enough to do. And here I made the connections for the power. In this case, it's a single connection, and these wires will be going to the terminal block and then fed back to the control unit. And you can see I've got the wires insulated with, and for this case I'm just using electrical tape. It does just fine. And then I'm going to go ahead, and since we are unable to use this piece again, which would normally go right here, I mean we could, but I don't want to use it because this part here is going to stick right out. So instead of doing that, I'm just going to tape over all these connections with my duct tape, and make sure that this piece is a solid, good, decent piece of track. So we'll go ahead and we'll get all that done and make sure this is good to go. Okay, I've completed the wiring on the track section of the control unit after they were separated, and I went ahead and I added the extension wiring to the control unit using the same exact process of soldering and insulating. And one thing I did do that I did not show you, if you remember this big giant piece that was the bottom of the control unit and track section combined, I ended up cutting this piece right here, and you can see a little notch right here along the edge. I just cut that on the control unit side of that notch, and the reason why is I wanted to screw that piece back down underneath the control unit, because that happens to be what holds the circuit board in place. And if you don't, you go to push on the buttons and guess what, everything just falls down. So lesson learned on that. You're going to want to cut this piece and install it back on the bottom portion of the track, and that'll help keep everything intact like it's supposed to be. Okay, so like I said, I've went ahead and I've run my extension wiring off the control unit, and I've terminated everything, and I've attached it to the terminal blocks as I outlined previously in episode 10, and those are all done and installed in this nice little pull-out drawer over here. And I don't know how well you can see it, but right here is a piece of split loom that I use to contain the wiring and to keep it managed. And this portion of it here works very well. And how this is going to work as a whole when the track is complete is, of course, right here on the very front is going to be my fascia. And I'm just going to have a nice pretty hole cut for the control unit right up into here. And that'll keep everything nice and recessed inside. And I toyed with the idea of having drop-down doors in the front, and I think I've abandoned that idea because of the simple fact that I'll have to drop so many doors down just to run a race. There's no sense in it. Just leave them open and you'll be fine. And the inside of the drawers, of course, the bottom surface here is going to be the yoga mat material. Everything else will be painted probably a nice darker gray. And when the fascia is on, of course, the fascia will be black. And right up inside here, inside the fascia right here, is going to be some, you know, very soft, low-powered LED lighting, and that will illuminate these cubby holes, so you're not reaching into this just dark hole here every time you're trying to do something. It'll be nicely illuminated, and you can see what you're doing with no problem. So that I'm looking forward to. And like I said, these little pull-outs, you probably won't be pulling them out very much, but if you have to get to something, it makes it real handy, and you've got much better access here with it outside of the layout. And you can see the entire hump section will be well outside of the fascia. So it does a good job of giving me what I need exactly. Now these two dongles here, those will actually be relocated back up to the deck here, and all I got to do is get the appropriate cableage, and I can just extend these cables very easily and get them mounted up here. And I want that for two things: one, for ease of access, and two, for a clear line of sight. And these will be just simply hidden underneath one of the grandstands, and all I have to do is just lift the grandstand up, move it over, and I can get to anything I need to get to with no problem. It's right here, and I don't have this annoying blinking light blinking me in the face all the time. That's the other great thing about having it down here, is it hides a lot of those blinking lights, makes things a lot more enjoyable. So very good. This works very well. You can see it just fires right up, and if I roll a car across each one of the sensors, you can hear them kick in with no problem, and they work fine, and the car works just fine. All the buttons function, everything does exactly what it's supposed to do. So there's no reason not to do this. It works great, actually, and get your control unit out of your way and off your track. And this can be really important if you're doing a landscape layout like I am. So, because this thing looks as nice as it looks, it's just not what you want to see in a landscape layout. So, good. So that means now that all I have to do is relocate the wireless charging stations in the same way, and then I can, at the end stage, is go ahead and connect all my terminal blocks, like I have all my southernmost terminal blocks together, and that's it. The track will be completely wired up at this point, so I can go ahead and then proceed with doing the infill and outfill and get that knocked out. So this will wrap up episode 14 about relocating the control unit. I want everybody to have a good night, and again, that's a wrap. So thanks again, and have a great night, and we'll see you soon. Thanks for watching.